welcome everyone to Lunch Without Lunch. I am Amber Rowden, and I'm the community storyteller at Rainforest, Alberta. We have Bridget Legault, who's the community manager at Rainforest, Alberta. Feel free to give a wave or say hi.
Hi, everybody.
If you're new to Rainforest, please introduce yourself in the chat. Please share a reaction on the screen. We love to see all the newcomers to the community. And I want to start off with a land acknowledgement. I have a video from the Calgary International Film Festival and the Rosa Foundation.
Growing up, my grandma always told me that the land took care of us, and it still is taking care of us.
Good.
And it never asks for anything back.
Yes.
It is a way of life to always honor the environment. It's not something that you just can turn on and off. It's a living daily lifestyle.
And land acknowledgement is a way to acknowledge that we're coexisting in this land with the native people, and we should acknowledge that this is actually their traditional territory. But at the same time, we are all guests to this land.
The land plays a
Oh, we lost the volume member. That's okay.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you. We just lost the end of the video there, I think.
Okay, sorry, I don't know what's happening with my computer. I think it's frozen from the weather. So yeah, thank you for joining us in a land acknowledgement. If you're coming from somewhere else in the world, in the province, in the country, please share your own land acknowledgement in the chat. And we love having people come and share their own land acknowledgement as well. So if you'd like to do that at the beginning of Lunch Without Lunch, please let me or Bridget know, and we'd be happy to have you share that with us. Okay, hopefully you'll be able to hear this, this video. If not, please let me know. But here's an introduction to Rainforest. Can you hear it?
Give it a sec. No, we can't.
Oh man.
Or for, how about if I narrate? Or for a seed to sprout at Rainforest, Alberta, we know the answer. It's rooted in trust. I actually kind of know this by heart. Why don't we just step in here and share? I mean, you can read the captions as they go across, but as many of you know, we are here to build a culture of trust. This analogy is based off of a book from 2012 called Rainforest, Building the Next Silicon Valley. And it's all about research which relates to the analogy of actual rainforest being like tech ecosystems. And within those tech ecosystems, they are wild and woolly. And when we trust wild things to grow, innovation happens. And so we exist within the Rainforest Alberta movement to build that trust, create space for collisions, for increased diversity, inclusion, collaboration, and supporting and giving back to each other. So a beautiful video made by our friend Mackenzie Bedford, who was a previous community manager here and animator and artist. And it's driving you to sign the social contract. So if you're new to the movement, we are all about the innovation of ways. So we don't operate like corporate culture. We are trying to create a culture, as I mentioned, of trust and et cetera, et cetera. That's all articulated in the values of our social contract. And so you just have to go to our website there if you haven't signed it yet. Once you sign it, we hope that you live these values in your work within the tech sector and hopefully beyond. And you also gain access to our digital community on Slack once you sign that. And if you don't get that onboarding email after signing the social contract, just contact Amber and I, and we'll help you get onto the online community there. It survives by, we're talking in the chat about how rainforests survive in this weather. Shoveling.
That's awesome. Thank you for that also, Bridget. That was fantastic. I love that.
We're all about improv at the Rainforest.
Totally. Okay, so we use 6 pillars to guide our conversations and actions, and they're not all weighted equally. In an ecosystem, the right balance is crucial, and we measure these each year through our scorecard assessment. So culture is weighted 30%, which is one that we are heavily focused on at Rainforest. And leaders is 20%. 15% is resources, 10% is engaged activities such as lunch without lunch, 15% for policy and infrastructure, and role models are 10%. So tips to making the most out of your lunch without lunch experience. Introduce yourself in the chat, which I'm sure many of you are doing. The chat looks very exciting right now. Share what you're working on, what you're looking for, and what you can offer others. We're all about giving back and paying it forward at the Rainforest. Connect with individuals through direct messages. Put your camera on. Love to see everyone's face. Ask questions. Keep connecting on our Rainforest Slack workspace. Check out #lunch notes for capture of today's chat. And our recordings are posted on YouTube. So if you missed a session, feel free to watch it back on our YouTube. And each week we highlight a value of our social contract. And this week it's fairness. So I will be nice and treat everyone fairly. I will take advantage of no one. We'll put the social contract link in the chat for you, but if you want to scan that QR code, it'll also take you to our social contract. All right, so before we get into our guest speaker today, we have our wonderful friends from Inception U. I believe Jen is here and Margot, and they're going to do a fun trust building activity with us. It's been a lot of fun having them with us and sharing these activities. So I'm really looking forward to what they're going to be doing today. So Jen and Margot, I'll pass it over to both of you.
Thanks, Amber. And hi, everybody. I almost want to say Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays, but might be too soon to say that. Welcome to this meeting this afternoon. And I love that trust is a theme for us today. What I'm going to have you all do is, just need to organize my desktop here. What I need you to do is open up a browser, and I'd love for you to do the following. So I'm going to put some information in the chat. You're going to go to a website called menti.com. And when you get to Menti, if you want, well, not if, you can enter the code, which is in the chat. This is also available on an app as well too. So if you feel so inclined, you can download the Menti app. So just so everybody knows, before you start putting in your information, and I'm going to share my screen here too. So this is an instrument and a tool that we use often to, have people engage in different forms of conversation. It is anonymous, so it's a great way for people to, let us know how they're doing. And so we're going to do 3 kind of questions here. The first one is just a general check-in. So once you get to menti.com, give yourself a rating for these 5 areas. So the 5 areas we're just checking in on are work, love, play, sleep, and eat. And what you're going to start to see here is kind of the average of how everybody is doing here today. And at the bottom, it also tells me how many people have submitted a response. Margot, do you have anything to add? Because this was a question that I got from you a couple of years ago. Do you have any thoughts you want to share about this?
Yeah, it's an easy way to check in, even if only with yourself, and seeing, hey, how am I doing? Without it being about, hey, how are you doing? And everybody goes, fine, right? And because this is through Menti, it's all anonymous. So it's really doing a good check-in with you. And then we get to see overall, where are people at collectively? The snow may have dampened some of our spirits. And for others, it may have heightened your spirits because it means that there's holiday season coming, and maybe it's not. And so it's a really great, fast, effective way that we can do a little pulse check collectively.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Margot. So as people are entering where they're at, it's just really interesting for us as a community to look at where people are right now and how can we support as best as we can these areas in one another, right? Whether it's through the relationships we have in our work day to day, or just checking in with how each other is doing. Any just thoughts or observations? I know Amber and Bridget, you're looking at the data on the screen. Any thoughts that are coming to mind for you?
Yeah, I think we have to host lunch without lunch outside in our snowsuits, making snow angels or something fun. Up that play factor.
So, Amber, how about you? Any thoughts?
I see that the love is real high, so that's good.
Yay!
I love that.
Yeah, and what's interesting too with these words is it can mean a lot of different things to different people. So however you interpret this, is completely up to you. So we're going to move on. So there is a question, and what you're going to start to see here, and you can submit, various responses if you want. This question and the next one on the next slide is inspired by James Clear, and wanted to ask about momentum. And, it's interesting because, with the weather today, I'm feeling a bit of a shift in my own personal momentum. But I do want you to consider, where do I have healthy momentum right now? So you can think about this for yourself, in your work life, in your home life, fitness, well-being, whatever makes sense to you. And then consider, where do I have unhealthy momentum? Remember that these responses are anonymous. I don't know who is saying what, but we're going to start to see a scroll come up, and it'll be interesting to see where people are at. So I encourage you to consider these questions and pop in a response. Oh my gosh, I had hollandaise the other day too. So whoever said that, I am I am with you on that.
Oh, this is fun.
Yeah, it looks like there's some interesting momentum with movement for a few people. Someone's starting a business. Yeah, reading, fitness. Yeah. And I'm assuming the one that's in the yellow, someone might have some unhealthy momentum with becoming more of a homebody. Margaret, do you have any thoughts on that? Because I think too, for some people that might be good momentum, right? Do you have any thoughts on this sort of distinction between healthy momentum and unhealthy momentum?
Yeah, and checking in. So some thoughts are having yourself be your own barometer and checking in. And if you're seeing that not being around people, staying home more often, that it's reaching a point where you have a sense, check in with your body, check in with all the different senses that you have available instead of only checking in with our thoughts, and seeing, is this healthy or unhealthy momentum for me? Knowing that there's no one way of being, and that there's no one amount that's going to be the ideal amount. And so what are the different factors, and what are the different sensors you can use for yourself to see, is this healthy or am I sliding into unhealthy momentum for me? I think we all got quite used to being able to be online, and sometimes coming back out a little bit more. There might be different levels of comfort and different levels of sensation that's new to us compared to how it was before. And so checking in and knowing that there's no one way that's the right way, that there's no one way that's either healthy or unhealthy. You're muted, Jen.
Well, I was trying to get everybody to just like figure out what I was saying. But it's really cool when people respond and share their thoughts. And maybe for some of you, you're not sure how to answer this question right now. That's okay. But maybe just do a check-in, as Margot said, where do I have some momentum that I'm really happy with right now? And then where is some momentum happening that may not be serving me in the best way? Right, we've just got one more question here. And this one, actually, it's funny. I hadn't planned this, but with the How's Your Five, it seemed like this worked out really nicely. But I'm curious if you can put in some ideas of how today can feel like play for you. And for some of you, maybe the thought of playing in the snow is like not play at all. Maybe it's I don't know, finding some joy telling jokes. I mean, we can play in so many different ways. So just want to see what your ideas are out there for you to have a sense of play in your day today.
A lot of snow angels going on. that is the easiest thing to do, to play in the snow. That's
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we better all get outside.
Yeah, and Amber and Bridget, feel free to chime in here too. But it's interesting because we have 45 minutes together
Mhm.
for the rest of this time, and my hope is that we can have some fun and play together here today as well.
Yeah, exactly. And part of having you all join us every week now, and hopefully we can continue to do so, I think adds this kind of element of both play and also just checking in with ourselves, and using this time we've already set aside every week to do a bit of this, I think is great, and helps to get to know each other better too. Even though this is anonymous, we can see where the vibe's at in the room. This weather is great, you guys. I just moved back from Squamish, and if it snows like this, you're sopping wet and chilled to the bone. Whereas here, you can actually play in this stuff and not drown. It's great.
I think what might be an interesting challenge here is, people are putting out these ideas of how they're going to play today. So maybe take a photo if you can, maybe share it with Rainforest. I mean, maybe we can highlight how this is a focus for the community today. So big thank you to all of you for participating. And, I think it's really cool for all of us to see, as Bridget said, where each other is at and how we can continue to support one another. So thank you for diving in.
Do you use this very often, Jen?
So Menti is a fantastic tool. There's so many different ways that you can ask questions, gather data. It's anonymous. That's something I really appreciate, because it's a great way for people to check in, but you can also have a ton of fun with the kinds of questions that you're asking. So yeah,
I could see it as a really great tool to start other discussions in an office. I think it'd be really great. It allows people to participate or not. I think it's actually and then, just using it to encourage people to just actually have that conversation person to person would be, that's really great. I really like that. Thank you.
And there's different versions. The free Menti is actually pretty great. There's some pretty, great tools and strategies there. So check it out. And the other thing too to consider is, participation looks different for everybody. We do a lot of work at Inception U around this. Like, participation for some is observing, and that's great. And for some, it's, responding to the questions and contributing in that way. So just know that any and all participation is appreciated. And I think it's a really nice way to start this time with us, or that we have together here today. So
awesome. Thank you, Jen. Thank you, Margot. Thank you, Inception U, for being awesome Rainforest role models. We will get on with the show, as they say, focusing on another founder story here in the Rainforest. A little story told through the lens of the social contract from our friends at Openhouse.AI. So I've gotten to know Open House quite well over the last year with some work I've been doing, and really excited to have Jamie Toyoda here from their founding team. The company started in 2018. A little bit about Jamie is that he's inspired by collaboration, and he believes the most innovative companies solve problems by focusing and investing in strong engineering teams. So I think this is a great perspective, and by empowering those teams with modern architecture. What I know about the Openhouse.AI team is that they're a group of very independent thinkers who come together in this really collaborative, energizing way. And I'm really excited for him to share how they're disrupting the home building industry and using technology to really shift the industry, maybe beyond. I don't know. We'll hear from Jamie now. I'm not sure if you're sharing a screen or not, Jamie, or if Amber or I have maybe co-host.
I'll be doing it. I was just waiting for you to finish the introduction.
Awesome. Okay, well, welcome. I'll turn it over to you. If you have questions for Jamie, throw them in the chat as we go, or we will have some time for Q&A after.
Yep, I have it open as well, so I'll definitely be able to pass it over.
Awesome.
And yeah, I decided to go with a little bit of a slightly different approach. I've looked at a few of the past rainforests, but something at Open House that we really value is the ability to share ideas, to pass them around, and I thought that resonated well with the rainforest. So while we're going to be discussing a little bit about Open House, I wanted to actually spend the bulk of the presentation just kind of discussing a few of the things that we've been thinking a lot about over the last few years. So Yeah, the title of the presentation is being intentional about intentionality. Can everyone hear me okay? Just look for, okay, awesome. So yeah, so today I want to go over a little bit about myself, a little bit about Open House. I want to touch on our culture, and it's interesting because we actually created the culture before we even hit the before we even knew about Rainforest. We'd been working with Bridget for a while. We've been working with some of our other mentors, but we didn't really know, and it's been fascinating coming back and looking at how the intersection between our culture and the pillars work together. And then we're going to be going through some examples about how the two can coincide, and maybe some thoughts that other people can take away. And then the kind of key topic of the presentation is ad hoc versus intentional processes. Okay, I got your chat open now. Okay, so a little bit about me. So yeah, my name is Jamie Toyoda. I'm the director of engineering and a co-founder at Openhouse.AI. Really, I think something I've learned about myself over the past decade or so is that I'm inspired by collaboration more than anything. Our CEO is the product person on our team, but I'm the people person on our team. And truly what inspires me is the intersection between technology, people, and the teams, the processes, all of those things around how it works. So while we're a tech company, I do believe this exists in every industry. And being able to both motivate but also inspire, being able to communicate is one of the most important things that any company can aspire to do. This is my cat in the corner. I've heard some cat talk, but Moriarty's currently sitting and cheering me on, so that should go well. And yeah, and play volleyball, enjoy bouldering. And I saw some people talk about board games. I'm heavily involved in FallCon here in Calgary, which is a board game convention that just took place about a month ago. So if you want to check that out, feel free to check that out. We also have community events in like Brentwood and a bunch of different places if you're looking for games groups. I also play a lot of video games and things like that.
Cool.
So yeah, let's talk briefly about Open House. And actually, this is the only slide about Open House. So if anyone has any questions, feel free to put them in chat here. So Open House, we're a startup company founded in Calgary, and really we are a team of data scientists and engineers that are trying to improve the way that homes are built in Canada and the US at the moment. We believe that, coming into it, our founding story is kind of around the idea that a home is one of the most important a home is one of the most important decisions that you're going to make. And yet the amount of technology in it is shockingly low. It's one of the most laggard industries in terms of, the things that are happening there. So if you compare a home builder website who's doing, $100 million a year in revenue compared to a Shopify site that's doing $100,000 a year in revenue, there's more technology available on the Shopify site in terms of understanding what consumers are really looking for, what their buying preferences are, what type of consumer they are, how ready they are to purchase. And we really believe that we can do better. So that's really what Open House is all about. So we've been working with some members of the local ecosystem here in Alberta, as well as another 15 or so builders in the US. So yeah, does anyone have any questions on that? And David, if you're looking for people who know about games, I actually have a couple connections in the board game industry as well. So maybe you can send me a message on LinkedIn afterwards. I know the people who are working with Roxley, as well as a few of the other publishers in Calgary and Alberta. Okay, awesome. So here's Openhouse.AI's values, and these were kind of created over a number of years. These didn't, a lot of founders, were always told that culture comes first, right? It's one of the most important things that we can come up with: culture, vision, mission, values. All of these things are things that are pushed, but ultimately, these were developed over years, and we were only really able to formalize them in the last year and a half or so. So kind of quickly just talking through them. So the one on the far left, and this is what Bridget was alluding to, is probably one of our core values, if you've ever been in a meeting with us, is the idea of instilling idea meritocracy. But we really do take it further. I think idea meritocracy can be warped in very negative ways, but I think it can be very positive when done right. So the way that we work through it is we believe that the best ideas come from creating an environment where a diverse group of people can come up with diverse ideas. And I think a key part of how this ties into the Rainforest is that emphasis on diversity. And originally we were a bunch of people in a room talking loudly at each other, but as we've grown and as we've brought more members of the community in, as we've grown our team, we've learned and had to expand the idea to be able to make sure that everyone in the room can have a say. And sometimes that say is not a vocal say. Sometimes that's an email or a message that they're more comfortable with. Sometimes that say is a one-on-one where people bring up ideas. And sometimes I've had junior developers have fantastic ideas that they've just shared with me in like a sync up. So, creating the channels for ideas to come through are essential. The other side of it is the importance of saying yes and no. And that's really critical. If you always say no, you're destroying the psychological safety of the ability for people to be able to put forward these ideas. But always saying yes is just as dangerous, because empowering your team to execute on bad ideas, and it's not bad because they came up with it, it's bad because the idea, didn't pass through the various people that are going to help shape and refine it. That's equally dangerous for both the people and the company. So saying yes and no, not in equal amounts, but making sure that both are members of your vocabulary is absolutely essential. The one on the far right, accelerate career growth, pretty straightforward. We believe that the best way to build great products is to build a great team. So we heavily emphasize making sure that the people who we currently work with, who we've worked with in the past, or even members of the community can continue to grow and develop. But the middle one is something that's a little bit different than what a lot of people think. It's request help fearlessly, help responsibly. And I think especially in Western society, there's a little bit of a thought that helping is selfless and that helping is what we should aspire to do. And it's absolutely true. Helping is essential. And you see this in the Rainforest social contract. But the hard part is often requesting help. Asking for help is scary. It's hard. And it requires you to kind of put your ego aside, saying that I do need help for this. And it's often the best thing that we can do. So we need to be able to request help fearlessly, but help responsibly. And that means we help when we're able to, but we say no when there's other priorities, or you yourself are in a bad spot. We have to make sure that we can sustainably help. And in order to do that, we need to help responsibly. And yeah, I love that idea. Asking for help is a sign that you refuse to give up. And I love that. I'm going to write that down. I'm going to copy paste this. Okay. So yeah, does anyone have any questions on this? So as I said, a little bit of a different direction than normal founder stories, but hopefully this is still giving you an idea of like really what I believe the meat and potatoes of our company is, which is the people and the way that we interact. Our CEO, Will, who wasn't able to be here today, he's the one who has the ideas, but I figured that if I was going to share my perspective, I wanted to share the perspective of the people and how we work together. So something that I think is absolutely essential to any company and the culture that it creates is how the processes, how the people interact, how you work with, whether it's customers, whether it's internal. And I wanted to talk today about ad hoc versus intentional processes. So why intentionality in the rainforest? Well, the reason for that is because all of the pillars in my mind, except for policy and infrastructure, which is not something that necessarily like we can influence as founders directly, can be improved through making better decisions and better processes. And so I wanted to kind of talk about a tool that we can put into our toolbox to help kind of turn the levers that are required to improve all of these elements, rather than talking about one in particular. So let's start with the definition of ad hoc. Ad hoc means that for the particular end or case at hand, without a consideration of the wider application. And oftentimes when people think about ad hoc, they think about this, right? This is maybe a metaphor for your office. This is a metaphor for the code. This is a metaphor for whatever is in your business that's been done ad hocly, right? It's left a jumbled mess. We just plugged one thing after another. We, built the Lego without a plan. But I think Lego's actually maybe a good analogy here as well, because sometimes ad hocly means this. It's when you met a member of a person that you met at this rainforest, for example, at a coffee shop, and they just happened to be here and you decided to talk to them. It's the fireside conversation or the coffee conversation that you have at the office over the water cooler. Or maybe it's someone just reaching out to you over Slack if you're online. So while ad hoc is without consideration of the wider application, I want to make an argument that it's not strictly bad, but it can be extremely dangerous. So, in the polling idea, let's just quickly chat. What are some of the negative ad hoc processes at your workplaces? So maybe if people want to just type some stuff in the chat. I'm glad we already were doing some polling, so I'll give it just a few seconds here. I know that my time is limited, so
We've got lots of time. purchasing we have. Mhm. Ad hoc.
You know, Greg, I may have a similar opinion on that. So for us, you know, some of the negative ad hoc processes, one of the big areas was for customer success and support. We were basically just fire hosing every single issue that was coming through. And, you know, it was causing obviously problems as it went on. But lost my click. But I think just as important as what are some of the positive ones, and maybe I can give another example from our office. You know, the positive one is that we actually had a number of like informal lunch and learns where we just happened to go to Subway or to Tim Hortons or something like that, but we ended up discussing like a technical concept that, you know, some of the newer developers weren't familiar with. So that was a perfect example of like a very positive ad hoc process that wouldn't have happened if we had like booked a meeting in place. Maybe no one would have brought this up, but because we were just kind of happening to be together and someone took the initiative, this ad hoc kind of process took place. So yeah, feel free to share some more in the chat. I'll keep water cooler meets. I'll make sure that I'm paying attention there, and we can always get a note after, but I'll keep going just for the purpose of time. So yeah, the benefits of ad hoc. They allow for expression and exploration. They naturally move towards a stable point, and this is maybe, you know, the data scientist engineer in me, but ad hoc processes will evolve and move. They don't get forced into stasis, and because of that, they're going to move towards something. Now, sometimes the issue is it moves towards ease, but oftentimes they'll move towards what's working best for your organization or the people that are around for it, right? So I especially caution founders on like nipping ad hoc processes in the bud, because in many ways they're usually trying to tell you something. Sometimes they're telling you what's easy and it's not working, but other times they're telling you what the team is really wants to do. They're an essential part of growth learning, and as Greg mentioned, ad hoc is the origin story of every real process. And sometimes there just isn't enough time to plan, and we have to accept and not be hard on ourselves that sometimes we just have to do an ad hoc process. And we've all been there, but sometimes we berate ourselves, and I would really caution against that. Now, there are dangers though, and intentional processes are important as well. And that's why we should be intentional about when we set them up. So, you know, they might not be repeated in the future. This may be essential and they could just disappear. The other problem is it may be repeated in the future. We're doing something awfully and we're just keep doing it the same thing, right? We're just like the definition of insanity, doing the same thing over and over and over again, and we're never changing it. And the other really big one, and this one really ties into culture, diversity, things like that. A lot of things like microaggressions, a lot of things like, you know, bad hiring practices, which is something that I'll talk about our experience with. It can change negatively without awareness if you don't have an idea of what the process is intended to do. You know, you might fall into traps and not be aware of it because you've never actually explicitly set out what that process was supposed to accomplish. So when should we move to an intentional process? I had a few ideas. I'm sure there's many more, but when they're no longer accomplishing their original or intended goals, when they're optimized towards ease rather than effectiveness, and it's specifically when they're losing their effectiveness. Ease is great. I think any developer says that the best thing you can do is make things easier for yourself, and aiming towards ease is not a bad thing. But if you lose what it was trying to do in the first place because of ease, that's very dangerous. When they're no longer occurring, and this is a really big one, I think, for founders, and this is something that we've noticed, is when they're not scaling. When you have something that's working great in one area of your organization, but it's not scaling to others, you're not able to replicate a success because the people that are involved there and the processes that they've created are not well understood. And this can be hard to recognize, but if you're feeling like, you know, some parts of your organization run like well-oiled machines, the people are essential, but you can also extract some of that and start to think about what exactly is happening, what exactly those people are doing. So I wanted to give a few examples of things that we've dealt with, just to kind of tie this together and put it into a real life example. So an example that I mentioned earlier is hiring. And this is something that I'm sure every person in this room who's a founder has to deal with it. I saw a number of people who were searching for jobs. You're on the other side of this, right? And it's just as important for you, all of you, to understand what's going into hiring and how we can like kind of work together to make a better hiring community here in Alberta. And anywhere else that you guys might come from. So we stumbled upon a hiring process that works. It was somewhat luck, but it wasn't strictly luck. We had decades of intuition and experience between myself and our CEO in research and development and engineering. And the hiring process that we developed worked exceptionally well for hiring new developers. But we didn't really, it ultimately was ad hoc still. We didn't really understand what we had created or why we did what we did. We just knew that it worked. We could get the right feelings about people. What happened though is that we tried to apply a similar idea to a non-technical role like sales and marketing, and it all fell apart. We thought we were matching it 1-for-1, but what we didn't realize is that the 1-for-1 we were matching with wasn't 1-for-1. We were pulling the concept, but we weren't pulling the reason why that concept worked. And this really forced us to break down and become intentional about the way that we were hiring for these positions. The other problem was that we weren't hiring as diversely as it did originally. So I'll be a little bit vulnerable and share that like our original staff was more than 50% women, and we now have no female engineers. Like we turned over basically our entire staff over the course of the pandemic. I don't think we did anything particularly poorly or things like that. Lots of people were looking for changes during that time if you were in the tech community. However, a result of that is that we ended up backfilling almost entirely male, and we didn't mean for this to happen, but we realized that we didn't put anything intentional that prevented this. And that is just as bad because of the nature of the ad hoc process. And I think this is a huge lesson about intentionality and diversity. So what we did about it, we broke down exactly what was truly working, and we reached out for help. So we asked existing mentors, like, how do you hire for these positions? What works for you? And then we introspected on like, what about our hiring process was really making it work? It's that we were testing, like in our case, we were testing for specific skills, but we found that we couldn't define what skills we needed in non-technical roles. So we needed to ask for help from experienced members of the community who we trust about what the most important skills that we could hire for were, and then design the tests around, and then bring those tests to those valued members of the community to kind of reinforce that we're testing for the right things. And this has worked a lot better for us. So it really was that we couldn't just pull the test. It was the testing for specific skills and being intentional at every stage of our hiring process that we understood what skills we were trying to understand and extract and what values we were trying to get. And then regarding diversity, like I needed to reach out to members of the community. Rainforest has been instrumental in this. Bridget's connected with a number of people, but I needed to reach out to figure out like how we can be more intentional about it. The first step is determining that there's a problem, but the second step is figuring out how, and I didn't know how to solve it myself. And nor did our CEO. So we had to reach out. So we still we haven't hired in over a year at this point, or sorry, for over 6 months at this point. So we haven't adjusted it as of right now, but it's definitely something that will be on the table. And that's not a guarantee that our next hire will be, but it is a guarantee that we will be keeping these things in mind. And I've been working with Chic Geek, for example, is a resource that I reached out to, and she's Kylie's been super, super helpful. So yeah, that's been really helpful. So just quickly, one more example. Team growth and learning. So this one I'm sure is a very common story that a lot of people have felt, but we were highly collaborative. We worked in essentially one office. We were all sitting right next to each other, and knowledge and ideas were being shared every day. But then COVID hit, and all of a sudden it all collapsed. And the reason is because we didn't have anything intentional about what we were doing. It was all ad hoc and it was all working. So what did we have to do? What we became intentional about, we added non-work related chat to the end of morning coffee reviews. We renamed them from stand-ups. We made it okay for our meetings to go a little bit off topic when we create space for that, to ensure that we can get not only to people, but also more people felt confident. People were confident about what they were able to do, where they stood in the company, but they lost that surety when we stopped communicating so frequently. So we had to add in explicit callouts for it. We added explicit project kickoffs and retrospectives. We didn't previously need these because we all were always in communication. But when that synchronous communication broke down, we needed to add in stop points for this. And we also formalized how we communicated through some cultural pillars and some meetings that we ultimately had to have and discuss amongst the team about what's not easy, which is hopping on a Zoom call or getting on a Hangout, but was essential. And in order to do that, we now had to move away from the ease play, which is to just Slack or to just, not be, not reach out to your team and just kind of work with your head down. We had to like push through that barrier. So yeah, so we changed how we did code reviews, for example, a little bit, and we updated our design meetings to ensure that we always had an online whiteboard. Oh, no problem, Amber. So yeah, and that is what I wanted to share with you guys. Ad hoc does not always equal bad. We're in a community of innovators here. So I think this was probably already well understood, but I do want to just challenge anyone who is like really trying to process things out all the time and say that, sometimes ad hoc is essential. Understand when the warning signs are popping up that something needs to be formalized, especially from the purpose of, how people are interacting, how you're trying to create your culture. These are essential. Design your processes holistically. Keep in mind the goal of the process, your own company's culture, and the Rainforest social contract. So, not only thinking about one thing, but thinking about these in a broader sense. And I also just wanted to leave you with a few books that I've enjoyed over the last year. So The Goal, it's specific to factories, but it's really helped us in understanding construction, which has been fascinating, and I would recommend the concepts. I really like books that take away with a concept and a framework that you can apply to other things. And this one really teaches you about the danger of local maxima, or like, the danger of overly optimizing for one small area instead of optimizing for the thing. And I think this applies to the rainforest as well. If we just optimize for one plant in the rainforest, then it's going to overly grow, and we're going to lose our balance, right? And that's what can happen at organizations, at offices, and construction. And then the other one is thinking fast and slow. Intuitive versus active thought is probably one of the most helpful things that you can think about when you're dealing with people, and understanding what level they're thinking on, what level you're trying to design for when you're thinking about user experience, whether you need people to be active or intuitive, and how you can tap into both. So I would really encourage people to check these both out. And yeah, that's all I have for today. So I appreciate everyone for tuning in. And of course, if you ever want to chat more, feel free to reach out, or if you want to know more about Open House. So thank you very much for having me.
Thanks, Jamie. That was awesome. Thank you so much. What I love about Jamie, so intentional, so well researched, so like connected to the human side of things as well. It's such an awesome combo. Jamie, before those who are here and aren't familiar with Openhouse.AI, can you give us your elevator pitch, for lack of a better way of putting it? Because I'm sure you're about to get questions there.
Yeah, for sure. So I will just quickly pull up our vision. So our vision, or sorry, this is our, getting all the words mixed up, but essentially our company's goal is to know consumers better than anyone else. And right now we're applying that to home building. We really believe that home building is an area where, I mean, honestly, we've been in it for 4 years. People still often will put a thumb to the wind and try and guess what to do with $1 billion community, right? Like, who is buying? Why are they buying? What are their budget ranges? What are they looking for? What features are coming? How are people's lives changing? And we believe that there has to be a better way. And we know that that better way that's being done in things like Netflix and things like Amazon, in the e-commerce space, but also being applied to more longer sales cycle processes like cars now, for example, is to do it through technology, because the amount of data that you need to process is massive in order to really find, surveying won't work. So we believe that by tapping into existing data sources, looking at how people are looking through things, all that, looking at how they're buying, looking at how they're selling, we're able to improve that essentially through data science. So yeah, that's really the elevator pitch about what Open House does. We have products that focus on the consumer side of things, so like product catalogs. We have another product that we're working very hard towards, which will focus on how we can connect people, which is what I love, connect the salespeople to the home buyers earlier in the process to allow for more of a guided experience when it's required, but also allow the buyers to understand the products better and get recommendations based off what they're looking for. So interesting question in the chat. Are we focusing on optimizing the builders or the consumers? And the answer is that ultimately we're focusing on optimizing the builders for the benefit of the consumers. I don't think people optimizing for the consumers is, we don't need to optimize how they're shopping as much as we need to optimize that what product is going into the ground, what's being built is optimized for the market. So that way to ensure that we're building homes for everyone. So that's really what we're doing.
Great
Yeah,
takeaways there.
the industry is definitely dominated by males. I mean, home building in general. Actually, I'm working with a really interesting company right now, though, where almost the entire leadership team is female, which is fantastic to see in home building. But even in that case, they're still, their operations manager and all that side is still predominantly male because it's coming up through construction. Architecture is a little bit different, but yeah, and Nishan, exactly. Optimizing the processes, really optimizing how we're going about it. And Open House kind of reflects the presentation's views on that. So aspects of home marketing needing improvements like ecotech in homes. So what we're not really focusing on like specific technology in terms of building materials or technology like in the homes. We're more focusing on the processes by which the homes are being built. I do know that some of our builders though are investing heavily in things like this. A lot of it though is education. One of the big problems in home building is the educational content that's required for people to understand the impact that like an eco-friendly system would have is just extremely difficult. And this goes to both consumers having a responsibility to get informed, as well as home builders having a responsibility to ensure that that information is available and readily available in a way that they can understand. Oftentimes things are very technical and it makes it hard for people to understand what they're really buying. That's something that we're working with them to improve, but it's not easy. So ecotech is a perfect example, like insulation, right? Different styles of insulation, new improvements in it. These can make massive differences in the energy efficiency, which will make everyone's lives better. But paying an extra, I won't put an actual number up, but let's say X $1,000 for it up front really requires a lot of education. And that can be a really hard sell when they're trying to budget for every single dollar that they're spending. Unfortunately, I'm not familiar with Drake Landing in Okotoks. It's not something that one of our builders is working with right now.
Well, we don't see that question publicly. I don't think I know Drake Landing though. But any cool partnerships?
So we're not able to share any cool partnerships right now. We're working more primarily with the builders, but you know, we'd be able to share those in the future. That'd be more something for Will, our CEO, to be sharing.
And if you don't follow Open House and or Will Zhang is the CEO or Jamie on LinkedIn, I'm sure they'd be open to connecting there. Does anybody else want to unmute, throw in the chat? Any other questions for Jamie before we move forward? Comments, thoughts? This many people in a room, I've never seen you so quiet. Don't be shy, please.
My daughter's in the business, and you're right, Jamie. She says that when it comes push to shove, builders, traditional, all of them are still, you know, picking products that are cheaper on the final procurement list, and going ahead with those types of technologies, including the skills associated with how to install those types of things. So the industry is not moving very quickly according to her.
No, absolutely. It's definitely something that we see over and over. The issue with home building is that every decision is tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars from like a builder review. Right? These are large dollar amounts. We're not optimizing for a mug sale on Amazon. And getting those things to move requires a lot of trust in technology that just isn't there. People have been mentioning there's a number of prop tech startups in Calgary and things, which are great. But one of the hardest parts about this industry is building up the trust. And I think that's where things like, you know, building strong culture, really being face-to-face with people, meeting them, making sure that they can trust the people first, so that way they can trust the technology is essential. And that's something that I'm active about, and I hope something that we can continue to do. And it's something that we're pushing the builders to do with the buyers as well, right? That's why we're trying to connect salespeople more directly as a human face, so that way people can get educated about the decisions they're making. And we're trying to incentivize as well salespeople to make sure that we're building, or that people are buying homes that are right for them, because we think it will lead
any
to better.
Any sense as to how much the industry has moved to, you know, SIP construction and unique insulation services and
Very,
retrofit.
I think it's still very little. There was a really interesting survey done on, or not survey, there was an interesting industry report on basically the success of startups in the real estate industry, the building industry, and they're extremely low, and they're even lower in new building materials and things like that. The risk associated with a builder taking this on is monumental, and it's really the risk aversion that gets a lot of builders to where they are today. And not only that, there's also a large amount of what can be like survivorship bias to a certain extent, but also just like once again, risk aversion, right? When a project is under budget, it's under by a few $1,000s. When it's over budget, it doubles on a $800,000 home, and that is absolutely massive. So that's some of the forces that we're fighting against, and I think that's why technology has to play a role.
Well, what about regulatory as well? Because I know there's multiple times that I've been involved in as an investor in new technology for building, and only to be kiboshed by regulatory.
Absolutely. It's a major concern as well, and this is something where, you know, it's not something that Open House ourselves is dealing with, but it is something that I know the builders, and like the amount of regulation in home building is important, but it also needs to be able to evolve with the times, I think, and allow builders to experiment more. And so this is not an area that I'm an expert in, though, so I don't want to overly comment on it.
Great, that's okay.
Okay. We probably don't, well, we could do a really quick kind of connection breakout room here, and we'll come back at 8:56. Sorry, 8:56. What time zone am I in? 12:56 for community announcements. There is so much going on right now and over the next 2 months. So come back for that in about 4 to 5 minutes, but we'll do a really quick breakout room, chat about what we've learned today or what we need help with, or more importantly, have to offer. If we could chat about that first. So opening the rooms, hop in there for 4 to 5 minutes, and we'll see you back very shortly. Cool. Welcome back, everybody. Great turnout, by the way. And I will say, of those who filled out the first poll, we were at exactly a 50-50 split of newcomers to the Rainforest and, you know, people who've been here before. So that's an incredible split. I don't know who invited you, but I'm happy you came. We're all happy you came. Keep coming. Every week is different and will continue to be different. So don't expect the same thing every week. We were just telling Heiko, we have a lot of new stuff planned for the new year. We will be spicing things up considerably, so stay tuned for that, and be cognizant of our schedule in the new year. This is in the new year, which I'm already talking about because, you know, the next 2 months will fly by. It won't always be virtual. It might not always be in person. You're going to have to stay on your toes as far as scheduling goes, but we are going to be experimenting considerably come 2023. So stay tuned. There is a ton going on in the ecosystem over the end of the year here in the last couple of months. So for those of you who are newer to the tech scene, November is probably the biggest, splashiest month when it comes to events. We have Innovation Week, which is spearheaded by Startup Calgary and Platform Calgary now, who run Startup Calgary. And Innovation Week is a week full of events, panels, activities, workshops. Their schedule is online, and I'm putting some of these links awkwardly in the chat right now. Their schedule's online. It's not all there yet. So just plan to like block out that week in November and be ready to participate in all of the fun that will be going on throughout the city, not just at Platform. Prior to that week, the Start Alberta Tech Awards are happening on, I think it's November 17th. We also have the Startup TNT Summit happening, I think the same night, unfortunately. But there's that, so choose your poison. And tons of other stuff happening. And I'm looking at some of you in the room who are hosting events at Platform. So we'll be sharing out your events that are going on during Innovation Week. If you want us to share anything else that you're putting on, just contact Amber. And Rainforest will be there every afternoon from 1 to 2 with some really interactive activities on the main level where they have installed a tree, an actual tree. So it's kind of like we'll be in the rainforest doing some really fun interactive stuff around rethinking leadership. So join us then. With the 1 minute left, does anyone have any more announcements of things going on they'd like to share? Go ahead, Ross.
Civic Tech YYC is this next Tuesday. We're doing all virtual this time, but we've got the City of Calgary coming on to talk about their digital equity strategy and do some information and engagement. So if you want to provide feedback from the Rainforest and then our digital side of things, come by and say hello and get engaged.
Awesome. That's great. Before we head off, if people have to go right at the top of the hour, I just want to say a big thank you to Jamie and Open House and to our friends at Inception U for sharing with us today, and to all of you for coming and showing up in the Rainforest. We'll see you next week if you have to go. Otherwise, we'll keep on with announcements. Peter?
Yeah, just Community Now Magazine is putting on a mental health day at the old Science Center downtown. So that's, if you haven't been to that location, it's awesome. And Krista is one of the rainforesters. It's been around for a long time, and she runs the Community Now magazine. So come on out, join us. It's a very inexpensive ticket, and probably a really useful day for a lot of people.
On that note, there's another mental health summit happening at, it's hosted at Platform, but it's, I forget the name, Wellness Collective. Ty McKinney will be a guest speaker, but there's also going to be speakers from the US, zoomed in virtually. That is November 7th. It's in our Slack if you need it. I'm trying to find the link for the Community Now event, but I can't. It's December 14th. Contact us or we'll throw it in the Slack too. All right, have a great week, everybody.